So I recently went to Bavaria, Germany, where I took a Steadicam workshop that was hosted by Betz Tools of Munich, Germany. It was a 5-day workshop at this hotel called the Schlafgut Oberenbach, where we worked on everything Steadicam related for 5 days straight. And I first found out about the workshop from an Instagram post, and I decided to email them to see if they had any more available spots, and I happened to snag the last one. So I hopped on a plane to go to Germany for this workshop, where I learned a lot more than I ever expected to. I met some really great people and made some new friends from around the world. So I wanted to make a video about all the technical and non-technical things that I learned during this workshop, and to show a little bit about my time there and just the overall experience of Steadicam 2023. And at the end of the video, I wanted to share a ONER that we came up with in order to share some of the skills that we learned during the workshop. So some quick details about the workshop. Here is the brochure. You could see that the workshop costs 5,200 euros with a tax of 988 euros. Now that is a tax for any nations in the EU. And if you are a citizen in a nation that isn't in the EU, then you could actually get your VAT tax refunded. The cost of the workshop includes 6 nights at the hotel. The first night being when everyone is coming in with a dinner to sort of introduce everybody, and the 5 next days are the workshop itself. It includes a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and a little wrap party on the very last day. The workshop included 20 students from all over the world, and at the end of the workshop you can actually see over here the names of everybody on this cool t-shirt that they gave us. The workshop was taught by Larry McConkey, Peter Cavaciuti, Alex Brambilla, Jorg Widmer, and Adam Mendry. This was a really great group to learn from, with a really impressive list of credits. If you actually don't recognize any of the names that I just listed off, then I highly encourage that you go to IMDb and check out their pages. All right, so let's get to talking about what I actually learned. So the number one thing that I learned during this workshop was this. The beauty of Steadicam and operating in general is that everybody has different ways of doing things. What works for one person may not work for another, and people could have complete opposite ways of doing things, and both could still get great results. So the takeaway is this: whether you're going to a workshop, or you're practicing with friends, or you're simply talking about work, be open to doing things differently from the way that you currently do them, and you want to learn from everyone. Another really big thing that I learned is that with more freedom of moving the lens like Steadicam gives us, the more intention and the more defined the path of the lens needs to be. Here's Larry talking a little bit about his philosophy when it comes to working with Steadicam.
I talk about where the camera wants to move, where the lens wants to move. That's what matters, and how you allow it to do its thing. In addition, and encompassing all that, the Steadicam allows you to do infinite kinds of moves. Your job is to figure out how to do one. Fuck all the stuff it can do. What's the right one thing you want it to do for each shot? So that's the dilemma always, how to isolate it from you and yet be controlled by you, but give it its own spirit, its own like inevitability, and that's the way I try to teach.
This is important because to me it explains why some days could feel like you're just putting shots together in a rush, as opposed to creating shots that are well crafted. And with Steadicam, because you could put the lens anywhere that you want at any given time, there tends to be a tendency to not really make any marks or rehearse anything and just sort of go for it. When that's the case, you and the actors you're working with are sort of trying their best to be consistent and to land into the same places, but it isn't the same. Larry McConkey would tell us how he doesn't do anything with the Steadicam in terms of trying to find where to put it. He always uses a viewfinder first to find his frames, and if he doesn't have that, he uses an iPad with Artemis, which is a viewfinder app.
I also never do anything without checking it with a finder first. I never use that piece of shit. That's difficult.
Larry would do all the rehearsals this way, with the viewfinder first, marking the actors, marking the position of the camera, and then after finding all the positions of the camera, he would take tape and almost lay track down with tape by making lines that connect all the dots, all the camera marks on the floor. And then after finishing the sequence and making the shot this way, he would actually then bring the Steadicam to do the shot. By using this method, it really helped everybody know the path that the camera was supposed to take. And of course, every frame would be perfect because the actors would hit the mark and the operator would hit theirs and everything would line up perfectly. And I know all of this sounds really obvious, but having someone like Larry McConkey actually tell you that it is truly important and isn't something that you should just throw away is really reassuring. Lay it all down, find marks for everything, and then get consistently great shots from take one. The third big thing that I learned was practicing Steadicam with your monitor turned off. Now, this is another technique from Larry where we would come up with a shot, record it, but do it with the monitor turned off. The point of this exercise is to solely rely on looking at the lens and where it's pointed in order to frame. When we first started doing this, it seemed like it was going to be really difficult or pretty much impossible, but what you quickly learn is just looking at the lens, where it is in front of you, what it's pointing at what angle it's pointed at, is pretty much enough for you to tell what you're framing. This exercise is perfect because the more that you do it, the more that you practice this exercise, the less the monitor becomes important. By practicing this exercise, you gain the ability and the confidence that you can create perfectly framed shots just by looking at the lens. And this technique really helps with this next thing that I learned. The fourth big thing that I learned is when doing stares and you have to lead an actor, do it in Don Juan. Now, I know that many of you probably don't like the sound of that, and you probably do it differently, or you may have been taught differently. However, I have become a fully converted believer in doing it this way, because if you have to do shots on stairs like this one, then it's gonna help you a lot more. Now, this skill of doing Don Juan when leading an actor down the stairs, in combination with the previous skill of looking at the lens and where it is in space and what it's pointing at, is gonna help you do stairs in a much easier way than if you were walking backwards.
Action.
The fifth thing that I learned is that if you don't want to go into low mode, but you need to be low and then bring the camera up high, that you could try squatting with a rig.
And
this is a technique that I learned from Peter Cavaciuti, and he says that he uses it all the time, and you can even add a little bit of movement from the start or at the end of a move, and it's just another really simple way to get the lens really low without having to like do some trickery with like an Apple box or something. And the last thing that I wanted to share with you that I learned in this workshop that I found important was when you're panning the camera in Steadicam, that you want to keep the pan at a consistent speed. Keeping the pan at a consistent speed means that the background moves at a consistent speed and looks really smooth. When there are inconsistencies in the speed of the pan, then the frame could look smooth, but the background feels a little jittery. For example, try not to pan faster all of a sudden just because you need to keep an actor in the frame. Either pan faster from the beginning in order to keep the frame smoothly moving across, keeping that background consistent in speed and keeping the actor in the frame, or coordinate with the actor and, you know, maybe adjust their speed and adjust your speed in order to keep that pan consistent. So that's just a small amount of the things that I wanted to highlight that I learned, that I took away from this workshop. And obviously there's a lot more tips that aren't going to be able to fit into this video. A lot of things that we learned from all of these instructors, and overall it was just a really great experience. So pretty much every night at dinner time from like 7 to 9, we would all eat, and of course everyone would ask stories about their time on set and what sort of projects they were about to work on or were just wrapping up. And it was just a really good opportunity to learn all these things that were not necessarily technical, but taught you something just from their stories. They would also, every night after dinner, they'd put up a projector, and you know, every instructor had their night to show some of their work, some of the work that they've done in their movies or TV shows. And again, go through the process of like how they got the shot. People were able to ask questions, and again, it's just another form of learning. Lastly, for the final day of the workshop, we split up into groups, and each group has to come up with their own oneer. Our group had the goal of incorporating as much as we can from what we learned in the workshop into our oneer. So here is the shot.
Action! Gerald? Holger? Ricky, erst wo sie ist. Kriege ich jetzt endlich das Buch?
Ja, jetzt endlich einmal, ja. Okay.
Ja,
Und
das ist
was
ein schönes
jetzt?
Buch da.
Ja, das ist super, ja.
All good, all good. Look, I got your book. Yes.
Alright, so that's it for this video. I hope that you got a lot of really valuable information from my time at this workshop, and hopefully some of these tips will be useful to you in the future. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.